I know not a lot of people were expecting Deity to enter the streaming microphone space, but they may have just released the BEACN Mic Killer for $100 less. Oh boy. This video is brought to you by the Loop Deck Live. Stay tuned to learn how to enhance your productivity with this tiny controller. I'm EposVox, the stream professor, and this is the Deity VO-7U. Deity is kind of more of a professional or prosumer audio company that release a ton of actual like production gear kind of microphones. And I've covered the Deity S-Mic 2 and S-Mic 2S, the shotgun microphones. Those were incredible and compete with my favorite MKH416 microphone. And then I also used their wireless lav kit, the Interview Connect kit. Phenomenal set. Haven't got around to covering it yet, nor their D4 Duo, which is like the perfect vlogging mic. Well, they have a new dynamic microphone for once. That's a USB microphone. It's designed for podcasting and streaming, which is not a space you might have expected them to get into. What's interesting, though, is just how similar it ended up turning out to the BEACN Mic in terms of presentation and overall style, despite the fact that I think I've known about this coming longer than I've known about the BEACN, which has been a long time. The microphone is pretty cool and competitive and has some cool features, especially being $100 less than the BEACN microphone, but it runs up against some serious competition that have been around a while, and it has a couple quirks that have had me kind of running into over the past week or so when trying to produce my review of it. This is actually my second review, as my entire first review got scrapped. We'll talk about that in a moment. So this is a USB-C dynamic microphone. Dynamic being more kind of rejecting of background sounds than condenser microphones, but sounding a little less natural. It's available for $170 on its own, which is exactly $100 less than the BEACN microphone, or they have a whole podcasting kit they sent out with their microphone arm for about $200, so $30 more. The microphone arm is okay. Nothing real special to talk about it. It competes with the $30, $40 microphone arms that you typically see on Amazon and that I covered in my big old microphone review kind of show, or microphone arm review showdown that I did. If you missed that, go check that out. Overall, it's fairly standard. We'll hold the microphone fine. The desk clamp for it is pretty nice and has a headphone hanger on it, which is really nice if you want to, you don't have an existing headphone hanger for your desk, but it does kind of limit what the microphone arm can actually be mounted up against in terms of like walls and things like that. So it restricts you a little bit, but adds a little bit of functionality there as well. Or you can just get the microphone itself and it comes with a tiny little table tripod. In the box is also both a USB-C to C and USB-C to A cable, as well as a few extra little Deity branded cable straps, which I guess is fine. Specs wise, it's a super cardioid capsule, which means as you get off of the, center of the capsule here, you're going to start getting super kind of colored and thin sounding and things like that, but it means it's going to reject a lot more background noise. It has a frequency response of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. They provided this tiny little chart in the manual, which isn't super legible, so I'll show the higher res ones on screen, although the lines involved still make it a little difficult to read. I don't know why they included a massive range that they did, but hey, that's fine. Again, it's USB-C and it runs at 24-bit 48 kilohertz. So this microphone is lacking all of the cool software features of the BEACN microphone in terms of the fancy software, 32-bit float, any of that, but it gets you at least 90% of the way there in terms of sound, or if you've run into the issues I have with the BEACN microphone, it kind of gets you 10% higher in terms of sound quality, at least out of box, and with a little bit of post-processing magic, it sounds pretty good. Also, unlike the BEACN microphone, this microphone's Mac compatible. Physically, it's a fairly standard kind of USB dynamic mic format. They're all kind of aiming for the SM7B style, and despite what any microphone company will tell you, which Deity is not, by the way, but despite what any microphone company will tell you, making a microphone that kind of resembles physically the SM7B does not make it an SM7B clone or competitor, including the BEACN mic. So you've got USB port and 3.5mm headphone jack on the back. You got dials on both sides, which I'm actually a fan of. I love having as much physical control available as possible. You've got a headphone gain dial, and then you can toggle it between just mic monitoring or the USB sound card to your headphones. And then on the other side, you have a mic gain dial. And if you hold that in, you've got some tasteful RGB LED modes, including my own preferred pink and purple color. So that's pretty nice. Or you got the rainbow unicorn vomit mode, or you can turn it off. You do that by holding in the dial and then tapping it to change modes. Pretty tasteful. You can turn it off if you like. It doesn't take away from anything. And then there is a mute button on the bottom here, which turns the LED ring red and mutes your microphone, but it also, in my experience, mutes your headphone output, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I don't think is an intended feature. It doesn't say anything about it in the manual, but it keeps happening where I will try to mute myself in voice chat, and then I can't hear voice chat. Really weird. The microphone comes with this very nice, thick windscreen, which is absolutely lovely to beat your plosives. And then it has this very interesting, like, Audio-Technica AT2020 style design, although it's still an end-address microphone, not a side address, despite the fact that it looks like an AT2020. It is still an end address, and they note in the packaging and everything that they make it super easy to screw off the front of it. So if you have a bunch of, like if you're in a podcasting scenario, you have a bunch of guests or hosts or whatever come on that aren't always the cleanest. Whenever I worked in radio stations, the pop filters and stuff were disgusting. Makes it super easy to clean, which is nice. My only big complaint about the physical build is there doesn't appear to be much shock mounting, so every little fumbling of the cable or your mic arm is going to translate into the audio, which is not ideal. And then, of course, the headphone output, it does act as a standard USB sound card on your computer. However, I did not feel that it was very high quality. On my Intel test bench, which is over here, the headphone amp is very, very noisy, and I keep running into this on this test bench for some reason, but it was very noisy. On my main computer, it isn't noisy, like it's fairly clean, it's just very low, like it's much darker than my HD6XX headphones, which are not that hard to drive, but you know, they're fairly higher end, and it's pretty dark and not great sounding compared to just about anything else. So you're going to be fine if you're using standard earbuds or some lighter driven headphones, but for whatever reason, I was not getting good results out of it. Before we get to the sound quality and samples, I want to talk about the gain staging, because you may have seen on the website ended up leaking early. Some people pre-ordered it early, blah, blah, blah. It has a built-in analog limiter that starts kicking in once you hit about 50% gain. The gain knob on the right, the gain knob on the right for the microphone toggles both gain and starts enabling the limiter. And the limiter as a feature is really cool. I'm glad they implemented it, and having it start toggling at 50% if you start getting too loud is the smart way to go. I don't disagree with any of these decisions, and this makes it much more competitive for newbies who tend to get really loud during a video game or something. And I talk about this all the time. It makes it super competitive to prevent them from clipping and distorting and sounding too ear breaky to the viewers. Totally fine decision there. The problem is that it does such a good job of not sounding like typical clipping or peaking or distorting that if you set your gain too high, it completely kind of trashes your recordings if you're trying to go for sound quality. And this may just be a me thing. I've clearly been having issues with the past 2 USB microphones I've tested, even though the XLR ones have been fine for me. But like right now, I have the gain set to about 60 or 65% in Adobe Audition, which is getting my peaks to like -12. This is way lower than I would typically gain stage for any other microphone. However, when I had it cranked up to get the levels decent in Audition for my traditional gain staging, I sounded terrible. In fact, I will cut to a clip from my original review that I shot right now. However, I'm going to tell you right now, as I like to change it up with these reviews, this is how it sounds with some EQ work. Let's switch over to the raw sound. Yeah, this is how it sounds out of the box, which is markedly worse. I originally hooked this up, play some Battlefield with some buddies, because Battlefield 20, it sounds terrible. And I started thinking I was losing my mind, because some of the frequencies that got messed up were some of the same frequencies that I feel are overemphasized in the BEACN mic after it runs through their compressor and things like that. So clearly there's some sort of presence boost going on here, although it's not as offensive as the BEACN mic. But once that limiter kicks in and you're just like riding it constantly, it sounds like a completely different mic in a terrible way. Once you're running it normally with gain staging set up fine, it sounds fine. Now this sounds completely noobish, despite the fact that I've, reviewed 100 or so microphones here on the channel over the years. First and foremost, I didn't know the limiter was there in the first place when I start blindly testing the microphone. And then secondly, again, it didn't sound like those traditional artifacts. And I was posting on Twitter trying to send people samples without disclosing what microphone it was. And even sent a sample to a couple people who were trying to figure out what was up with the frequencies and like why during my read some of them kind of came out weird. And I ended up having, I'll show you the original EQ curve I had to do just to make it sound decent. And I lost a ton of the high end. And so you want to be really careful with the gain knob in terms of if you set it too low and get too loud, you're going to start peaking and clipping because the analog limiter hasn't kicked in. So if you're at like 45% and you start yelling, then it's going to, here, I'm going to do that right now. All right, we have it set to about 45%, but I'm going to start talking too loudly so you can hear what it's like when I'm riding the limiter, or if you get right up on top of the microphone. But once you turn it past 50, then the limiter kicks in. But even if you get right up on top of the microphone and start clipping it, it still sounds like it's just a really cheap microphone. And that was what I got from my original review. I was like, hold up. Deity usually makes good stuff. Why does this sound so bad? It's breaking my brain. That was what was going on. So a few days of hair pulling and troubleshooting of EQing to figure out that it was actually just the gain knob. So this is a weird dynamic mic in which it actually performs better, so you don't clip or peak it at like a few inches away. So I have it kind of angled a few inches away here, and this seems to be the best performing for it. So some considerations to do, but beyond that, let's get into some of the typical mic comparisons so you can hear how it stacks up against the BEACN mic, which I think it beats in many capacities, especially for my voice, and some other similarly priced microphones. Thanks to our sponsor, Loupedeck. The Loupedeck Live helps you tackle your streaming, production, or general getting stuff done workflow effortlessly. 12 custom function buttons with the screen behind them, 7 programmable buttons, 6 tactile dials with button presses within them. The Loupedeck Live gives you powerful, precise control over your workflow. Between general PC control and macros to dynamic application profiles with integrations for all sorts of programs, including Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, Lightroom, and Premiere, vMix, DaVinci Resolve, and OBS Studio, of course, to the custom workspaces that combine all the tools you need. This tiny little keypad will rock your productivity world with fast access to all your necessary tools and unlimited customization. Get your hands on one today at the link in the video description. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. Talking while typing on box royal switches. Talking while clicking. Talking while typing on box royal switches. Talking while typing. Click, 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 click. Talking while typing on box royal switches. Talking while clicking. Talking while typing on box royal switches. Talking while clicking and typing. Talking while typing on box royal switches. Talking while clicking. Talking while typing on box royal switches. Talking while typing while clicking. Talking while typing on box royal switches. Talking while typing while clicking. Talking while typing on box royal switches. Talking while typing. Clickety click 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 click. Just as a more fair, direct point of reference, since I'm talking about this is the Deity VO-7U versus the BEACN microphone. Currently, I have the post-processing enabled on the BEACN mic. We're going to turn all of that off. All right, this is the BEACN microphone with 0 post-processing enabled. Test, test, 1, 2, 3, and this is the Deity microphone with 0 post-processing enabled. Since everyone keeps saying I'm still using the BEACN microphone too far away, I am like an inch away from my mouth here, whereas I have this one a little bit further away because that's required to not clip and sound pretty bad. Different mics need used different ways. Support my glitch art Patreon at patreon.com/glitchart to support my more artistic endeavors. Support my glitch art Patreon at patreon.com/glitchart to support my more artistic endeavors. We're going to switch over to post-process now. Support my glitch art Patreon at patreon.com/glitchart to support my more artistic endeavors. Support my glitch art Patreon at patreon.com/glitchart to support my more artistic endeavors. This is now the BEACN microphone with post-processing, and this is now the Deity microphone with post-processing. Here's how they sound in comparison. So overall, I have to say I'm not super impressed with the sound of the microphone, and my weird relationship with the gain knob, it has me a little frustrated. I'm not going to lie. However, it's fairly competitive. A lot of people are complaining about the price, but realistically, when they first come out, USB microphones typically run in the $150-ish price range to $200. This is price competitive with that. It competes favorably with a lot of the dynamic microphones. However, it is hard to recommend just to a random user to pay $170 for this when the Q2U exists for less than $100 most of the time, and the Elgato Wave exists usually around exactly $100. And will sound a lot more natural if you can manage your background noise on your own. However, compared to the BEACN mic, obviously the BEACN software is great, but if you get, say, for example, this microphone and just run some VSTs in OBS and pair it with the BEACN Mix Create, where you still get all the audio tracks, you saved yourself $100 for at least 90 to 95% of the same sound, if not better, because I am getting better results with this microphone than the BEACN mic. So it's pretty cool. Surprising for a lot of people for BEACN to jump into this space, but I think it makes sense. They've been making really high quality microphones in the professional space, and it makes sense for them to jump over to the consumer, streaming side as well, just to get their name out there. This is their first entry. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. If you want to know how to get the most out of your streaming audio, I have a complete ultimate audio guide here that you can check out for yourself, or if you'd like to learn about my best budget microphone recommendation, which is the Samson Q2U, you can check that out here as well. Remember, be kind, rewind. Product links will be in the description.